Okay, so in this video, we'll be discussing capital market. So what is a capital market? Okay, so we have here an article from Investopedia, and we start with the definition. What are capital markets? Capital markets are venues where savings and investments are channeled between the suppliers who have capital and those who are in need of capital. So the entities that have capital include retail and institutional investors, while those who seek capital are businesses, governments, and people. So essentially, yung capital market na tinatawag natin is ito yung venue kung saan yung mga tao or individuals or groups or companies that have money that they want to invest in certain endeavors, pwedeng sa businesses din, or pwedeng in properties. Okay, so they have that excess money and they want those money to earn a return or some sort of profit, right? But they do not want to do the work themselves. Yung tipong hindi sila, ayaw nilang gumawa ng sariling business or, to manage or operate their own source of, income or return. Okay, so what they want is to simply provide the money, let other people do the work, and then when they profit, then they would get a share of the profit, right? So ito yung mga tao na tinatawag nating investors din, okay, sa madaling sabi. Okay, and then on the other side, meron naman tayong mga tao na nangangailangan ng pera or funding or investment. Okay, pwede itong mga businesses, government, or people in the form of entrepreneurs, right? So it's possible that they have existing businesses, gusto nilang mag-expand, so they need additional funding, they need money, or governments, they have projects that they want to pursue, pero wala pang available na fund kasi collectibles pa lang ang taxes. Okay, so they could also, ask for investments, right? From the public in the form naman normally na bills, treasury bills or treasury bonds, right? And then on the part naman ng mga entrepreneurs, normally itong mga entrepreneurs na to, they have great ideas and they have a way to solve a certain problems or issues or to provide a service that would, solve certain needs of people. Okay, but normally they don't have the capital that they can use to pursue the idea or to make it happen, right? So itong mga taong to na merong excess money, and then on the other side you have here people that are in need of money. So nakikita sila in the so-called capital market. Okay, yung capital market, they are composed of primary and secondary markets. Later, madidiscuss natin yung difference nito. The most common capital markets are the stock market and the bond market. Okay, so between these two, mas familiar tayo dun sa stock market. Okay, kasi sa ngayon, itong stock market, kahit mga taong ordinary na tao lang kagaya natin, we can already participate in the stock market. Kung gusto nating bumili ng stocks ng mga companies registered in the Philippine Stock Exchange, then pwedeng tayo na mismo, okay? Gagamit lang tayo ng mga platforms by certain financial institutions na accredited ng PSE, okay? Before kasi, nung, wala pang mga available technologies, so before, kapag gusto mong bumili ng stocks or shares ng companies, kailangan mo ng malaking kapital, tapos dadaan ka talaga sa financial institutions, okay? Either sa banks or sa mga brokers or investment houses, okay? So if you want to buy a certain company's shares, what you need to do is, call up your broker, tapos sabihin mo kung magkano yung gusto mong i-invest, tipong how many shares you'd like to acquire of that company. Okay? Pero sa ngayon, again, with the advent of technology, meron mga online platforms na pinaprovide ang mga financial institutions, especially mga banks. Okay? So, ikaw mismo, pwedeng mag-create ka na lang ng account through their platforms. Tapos, lagyan mo lang ng funds, either, transfer from your bank accounts or, over-the-counter na lalandan mo ng pera, yung account mo. And then, you can use that fund or money to buy the shares of the companies that you want. Okay? And then also, medyo mas mababa na yung required capital. Okay? Pwede ka na ngayon makabili ng, let's say, 10 shares or 100 shares, 1,000 shares, depending on the price of the company stock. Okay? And you can, you can invest as little as 1,000, okay, if you really want to join the stock market and, just try out what it's like to trade stocks. Okay? So, mas accessible sa atin ngayon itong stock market. When it comes to bond market naman, medyo parang exclusive pa siya with financial institutions na, yun nga, old school pa, no? If you want to invest in bonds, edi talagang dadaan ka sa financial institutions and it would require a lot of money. I think the lowest is 100,000, yung mga tipong retail bonds na sinasabi. Okay, and then of course, you can just acquire them through the financial institutions, okay? And then, ayun nga, wala pang available platforms that would allow us to access them on our own, okay? Capital markets seek to improve transactional efficiencies. These markets bring those who hold capital and those seeking capital together and provide a place where entities can exchange securities. Okay, so yung capital market, parang, palengke. Andun yung mga nagtitinda and then pumupunta doon yung mga gustong bumili, right? Dito naman sa capital market, syempre, ang focus dito or yung product would be the funds, okay, or the money, or the investment, okay? So, andyan siya, yung mga tao na merong excess money, excess funds, tapos yung mga tao na nangangailangan ng investments or ng funding, edi, lalapit dun sa, pupunta dun sa capital market to get the money that they need. So, of course, merong mga process pa dyan, merong mga requirements, merong mga conditions, merong usap, negotiation between those people who have the money and those people who need the money, right? So, yun yung nagiging role ng capital market. That is, some sort, it's not an actual place, pero kumbaga, it's where these two parties meet, okay, and where their specific needs are being addressed, okay? So, yung key takeaways dito, again, capital markets refer to the places where savings and investments are moved between suppliers of capital and those who are in need of capital. So, normally, capital markets, financial institutions din, kasi normally, yun nga, doon naman talaga tayo pumupunta if we want to, in the case of businesses, kapag mag-i-issue sila ng panibagong stocks or kapag mag-i-issue sila ng bonds, so they go to the financial institutions, right? Tapos itong financial institutions, sila yung tumutulong sa kanila para mabenta yung financial instrument na yon, yung stocks or yung bonds. Tapos, syempre, binibenta nila is etong mga to is dun sa mga tao na merong excess money, excess fund, okay? And then they invest in those stocks or bonds, right? So, essentially, financial institutions, itong capital markets natin. But of course, financial institutions, they do have other services na pinaprovide sa public. Hindi lang yung para dito sa mga investors na, they want to invest and then, on the other hand, itong mga tao na nangangailangan ng fund, that they get the funding, okay? Capital markets consist of the primary market where new securities are issued and sold, okay? Pag sinabing primary market, kumbaga parang direct issuance, you have your companies, they have shares or bonds, ini-issue nila yung kauna-unahan na buyer or yung kauna-unahan na nag-invest sa kanila. So, essentially, yung exchange na yon, that's what we call the primary market. Tapos yung secondary market, edi where already issued securities are traded between investors. So, kumbaga, na-issue na nila first, for the first time, right? Tapos itong yung kauna-unahan na nag-invest or yung kauna-unahan na buyer, pwede nilang ibenta to other persons, okay? So, in that case, it's a transaction between, an investor to another investor, okay? So, kung let's say, kailangan niya na ng pera or, gusto lang niyang bitawan na yung investment na yun, so he can sell it to another investor. And that's what we call the secondary market. Yung existing, yung PSE, right? Essentially, that's already a secondary market kasi it's a transaction between stockholders or investors, okay? Kumbaga, yung transaction na yon unaffected yung pinakang company or yung nag-issue ng financial instrument ng stocks or bonds, okay? But when it comes to, again, yung first-time issue ones, which is between the company or the ang tawag doon, investee, or yun ang kailangan ng investment. Tapos yung first investor niya, okay, yun yung tinatawag natin na primary market. Alright? The most common capital markets are the stock market and the bond market. Okay, so yung magiging focus kasi yung, familiar tayo. And in a way, we'd probably deal with them. Okay? Understanding capital markets. The term capital market broadly defines the place where various entities trade different financial instruments. These venues may include the stock market, the bond market, and then kasama rin yung currency and foreign exchange markets. Okay, but of course, financial institutions, they also have that. Most markets are concentrated in major financial centers, including New York, London, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Here in the Philippines, we have PSE. And then, of course, the financial institutions, they can also provide the venue for the capital market. Okay? Capital markets are composed of the suppliers and users of funds. Suppliers include households and institutions serving them. So, example, you have your pension fund. As siguro in counterpart dito sa Philippines, we have SSS and GSIS, and then you have your life insurance companies, private. Okay, but of course, SSS and GSIS also provide these. And then we have various charitable foundations. And then we also have non-financial companies, okay, that generate cash beyond their needs for investment. Okay, but mga organizations or businesses, and they have excess cash na, hindi naman nila kinakailangan sa pag-ooperate, and they want to put it somewhere na mag-generate ng profit or return. Okay? Users of funds include home and motor vehicle purchasers, or these are examples, specific examples. Non-financial companies and governments financing infrastructure investment and operating expenses. Okay? So, una nga, meron tayong mga businesses, right? Either they need it for expansion or nangangailangan lang sila ng, short-term source of cash for their operations. Okay? And then, on the part nga ng government is that they probably want to, start certain projects, pero since yung kasing taxes ng mga tao, hindi naman siya, di ba, nagba-budget tayo every year, yung nakalagay sa budget na yun, hindi naman siya available agad in cash kasi siya ay, collection din ng bansa for one whole year. And ang mga tao naman, hindi nagbabayad agad ng taxes ng January pa lang, right? So, nagbabayad ng monthly, quarterly, and of course, annual taxes. Okay, so yung naka-budget ng bansa, yung national budget na tinatawag, hindi naman siya available agad. So, what they do is, kumbaga, collectible pa lang siya throughout the year. Okay? But if they want to start certain projects, gusto na nila agad gastusan, so they can issue bonds. Na itong bonds, ini-offer is sa public. Tapos itong public, they acquire the bonds, bibigay sila ng pera sa government para may magamit na si government. Tapos, in return, edi makakatanggap sila ng interest. Okay? Normally, kapag government ang nag-issue ng financial instrument, so, mababa lang yung interest rates kasi very secured naman ang government kasi kumbaga sure na magkakaroon ng collection from the taxes and siguradong mababayaran yung return. Kaya normally, pag government ang issuer ng financial instrument, mababa lang yung interest rate compared mo sa private companies or entrepreneurs, right? Okay. So, ayun. And then operating expenses din. ng either businesses or governments. Capital markets are used to sell financial products such as equities, shares of stocks, and debt securities, bonds. Okay? Equities are stocks which are ownership shares ng isang company. Debt securities such as bonds are interest-bearing IOUs. Okay? So parang, loan din or debt. But we call it bonds. Okay? Kapag in-issue siya ng private company or ng government. So these markets are divided into two different categories. Primary market, new equity stock or bond issuances are sold to investors. And then secondly, we have the secondary markets. Existing securities are traded. Okay? Capital markets are a crucial part of a functioning modern economy because they move money from the people who have it to those people who need it for productive use. Okay? Kasi normally, itong mga taong may pera, hindi naman nila ginagamit sa business, nakatambay lang doon yung pera, hindi nagagamit to for economic growth din naman ng isang bansa. Okay? Kasi kung lalagay sa capital market, gagamitin ng mga taong nangangailangan for their businesses. So, kumbaga umiikot or nagsisirculate yung pera, nagagamit for productive use. Okay? Kasi yung mga businesses, syempre, they employ workers, they buy products from suppliers, and then they provide products for their customers. Okay, so nagkakaroon ng economic activity nakakatulong for the economic growth of the country, right? Primary versus secondary market. So capital markets are composed of primary and secondary markets nga. Majority of modern primary and secondary markets are computer-based electronic platforms. Okay, meron na tayong mga ganyan ngayon. Mga online platforms. Primary markets are open to specific investors who buy securities directly from the issuing company. Normally, ang mga issuing company, they prefer dealing with accredited financial institutions din. So yung primary market, normally it happens between the company and a particular financial institution. Or, normally naman itong si financial institution, meron siyang mga VIP accounts or VIP clients na sila naman talaga yung maraming pera, naka-lodge din dun sa financial institution. So, when there's a offering from the company, they call up those certain clients. And if they want to acquire the security, then they do so on the behalf of their clients. Okay, but essentially, it's direct transaction sa company, okay, and then dun sa investor. Okay, it could either be the financial institution itself and or pwede rin yung client nila, okay? So, yun, considered primary offerings or initial public offerings. When a company goes public, ibig sabihin yung shares niya is pwedeng i-offer sa general public. So, yun yung tinatawag natin na IPO. It sells its stocks and bonds to large-scale and institutional investors such as hedge funds and mutual funds. Okay? Counterpart natin dito, mga nag-handle niyan, financial institutions, including not just banks but investment houses, then investment firms. Okay? Mga brokers, ganyan. The secondary market, on the other hand, reiterate lang natin, includes venues overseen by a regulatory body like the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, where existing or already issued securities are traded between investors, okay, or PSE, Philippine Stock Exchange, okay. Issuing companies do not have a part in the secondary market. Between investors na lang siya, okay. Dito sa Philippines, so again, we have PSE, Philippine Stock Exchange. Ano yung role ng secondary market? Ang important purpose niya in capital markets is they create liquidity, giving investors the confidence to purchase securities. Kasi kung baga alam mo na merong tao or merong mga investors na gugustuhin na bumili pa rin ng security na yun or ng shares na yun. Okay? So, kunwari ikaw gusto mong bumili ng shares ng isang company, bumili ka. Later on, nangailangan ka ng pera, so pwede mo siyang ibenta to other people kasi merong mga existing buyers naman talaga. Okay, so in that sense, it helps with the liquidity. Okay, so kumbaga mapapadali doon sa isang holder na i-dispose yung kanyang hawak na securities kapag meron siyang pangangailangan. Okay, or let's just say na gusto na lang gusto na niyang, i-dispose yung security, so he can do so in the secondary market. Okay? The existence of the secondary market, again, provides a venue for the investors to liquidate yung kanilang mga holdings. Okay? Capital markets expanded. So, capital markets can refer to markets in a broad sense for any financial asset. Okay? So, hindi lang siya stocks and bonds. Yung kanina nga nabasa natin, meron ding foreign exchange or foreign currency, right? So, let's go over these. Corporate finance. In this realm, the capital market is where investable capital for non-financial companies is available. Investable capital includes the external funds included in a weighted average cost of capital calculation, common and preferred equity, public bonds, and private debt that are also used in a return on invested capital calculation. Capital markets in corporate finance may also refer to equity funding, excluding debt. Okay? Again, capital markets, in the sense na yung capital is, you're funding or you're providing money para gamitin ng isang business. Okay? Parang, capital ang dating. So, aside from the stock market, saka sa bond market, itong capital market, pwede rin siya mangyari between, an investor and an existing corporation. Or, essentially, corporation is still a business, pero in a way, medyo large scale siya, no? Kasi corporate yung kanyang existence. So, ang nangyayari is, a corporation may approach an investor, tapos magkakaroon sila ng transaction wherein, of course, itong si investor, popondohan niya itong si corporation. So, in that sense, it's still a capital market of some sort, okay? Pero ang dating niya is corporate finance, okay? Kasi direct na sila na finance nitong si investor yung corporation, okay? Pwedeng ang mangyari, bilhin nitong si investor yung equity nitong si corporation, yung common stock niya or yung preferred stock, okay? Equity financing tawag natin doon. Pwede din naman na bonds. Let's say itong si corporation, instead of the equity, mag-i-issue siya ng bonds, tapos yun yung ibibigay kay investor kapalit ng kanyang funding na ibibigay sa corporation. Okay? That's also possible, but I don't know why na sinabi dito na excluding debt. Okay? Kasi essentially, it's still some sort of capital, right? But when you think about it, capital normally refers to equity naman talaga. Okay? But again, capital markets, we have stock market and bond market. Stock market is for the equity, parang ownership ng business. And then yung debt, yung bond market, it's like a debt wherein parang utang lang. Okay? Nangutang lang itong si business and kailangan niya syempre ibalik to the investor, okay, after some time, okay? Next, we have financial services. Financial companies involved in private rather than public markets are part of the capital market. Okay, of course, nabanggit natin kanina, financial institutions, kasi normally they really are involved. Parang, some sort of middleman between the companies, and you have the financial institutions, and then you have the actual investors. In a way, dumadaan siya sa financial institutions kasi kumbaga sila yung legit talaga na humahawak. Okay? And kumbaga sila yung merong expertise din, and they can provide advices, expert advice, and some sort of research studies on, the goings on in the market. Okay? They include investment banks, private equity, and venture capital firms, in contrast to broker-dealer and public exchanges. Okay. So again, and then we have public markets operated by a regulated exchange. In our case, we have PSE. Capital markets can refer to equity markets in contrast to debt, bond, fixed income, money, derivatives, and commodities markets. Okay. Mirroring the corporate finance context, capital markets can also mean equity, as well as debt, bond, or fixed income markets. Okay? Capital markets may also refer to investments that receive capital gains tax treatment. While short-term gains assets held under a year are taxed as income according to a tax bracket, there are different rates for long-term gains. These rates are often related to transactions arranged privately through investment banks or private funds such as private equity or venture capital. Okay, short discussion about capital gains tax. The government is encouraging investors to hold their investments for, longer term. Kapag short term siya, tapos let's say, di ba, nagbili ka ng investments or nag-invest ka. Tapos after, a year or two, nag-withdraw ka, withdraw mo siya. And then of course, either meron siyang profit or merong loss, right? Kapag may profit, then you would also need to pay the so-called capital gains tax. Normally, pag tumatagal yung holding mo, let's say 1 to 2 years, medyo mas mataas yung capital gains tax. Pag 3 years, medyo lumiliit. 4 years, lumiliit. 5 years, lumiliit. I think after 5 years ata, parang wala ng capital gains tax na binabayaran. Kasi yun nga, ina-encourage din naman ng government ang long-term investing. So if you don't want to pay capital gains tax, then hold your investments for longer than 5 years. Okay? So yan. These rates are often related to transactions arranged privately through investment. Okay. So frequently asked questions natin about capital markets. The same ba sila as financial markets? So while there is a great deal of overlap at times, kasi normally sila lang din naman yung players. Financial institutions is one of the major players in all these types of markets, right? There are some fundamental distinction between these two terms. Yung financial markets encompass the broad range of venues where people and organizations exchange assets, securities, and contracts with one another. Okay, so you have your assets, securities, and contracts. Tapos, yung classification nila normally ay secondary market. And then you have the capital markets used primarily to raise funding. Okay, usually for a firm to be used in operations or for growth. Normally, yung money involved, ginagamit siya for funding or para makapag, continue yung business, makapag-expand, or yung isang entrepreneur, masimulan niya yung kanyang business. So, funding, raise funding, or raise capital, ang pinaka-main point ng capital markets. Yung financial markets, pwedeng assets, like let's say sale of real estate properties, or movable, chattel mortgage, mga ganyan. Kasama doon, And then yung securities, pwede sa securities, meron ding stocks, of course, meron ding bonds, and then other types of securities, insurances, ganyan. Yung mga, what do you call this? Okay, na-blank ako for a second there. Anyway, mga securities, okay? Insurance, stocks, bonds, swaps, options, okay, mga hybrid instruments, kasama din. And then contracts, what do you call that? Mga options, yung tinatawag na CDOs na before ginamit during the 2008 financial crisis. Okay, but that would be for another time. Okay, so yun, so much broader yung financial markets, and then yung capital market medyo much more specific siya. Okay, primary versus secondary market, nabanggit na natin, huwag na natin ulitin ulit. What markets do firms raise capital with? So companies that raise equity capital can seek private placements via angel or venture capital investors, but are able to raise the largest amount through an initial public offering, when shares become listed publicly on the stock market for the first time. That capital can be raised through bank loans or via securities issued in the bond market. So, paano ba nagre-raise ng capital ang isang business? Okay? So, normally, dalawa lang, mag-issue siya ng additional stock. Okay? Ang mga companies, normally, hindi sila publicly listed. Kasi may process pa yan, maraming conditions, maraming requirements. Kasi the authorities, the regulatory authorities, wanted to ensure na etong company na to is may kakayanan talaga na suportahan yung business, profitable, stable, would operate for a long time. Para naman yung general public kasi na o-offeran nitong initial public offering is makasigurado na in a way somehow safe naman yung pera nila, although there are corresponding risk. Pero kumbaga safe siya in a way na hindi naman basta-basta maglalaho na lang yung company. Okay? So, yun. Before makapag-initial public offering ang isang company, medyo may process na dadaanan. Re-register pa sila with the PSE and there are requirements. Okay? Tapos, that's one thing, right? One way to raise capital. Yung shares is ibebenta to the public. Okay? Ang isang company, kahit stock corporation pa yan, kapag hindi siya publicly listed with the PSE, pwede lang siyang mag-raise ng capital from not more than 19 individuals. Okay, so pwede siyang maghanap ng investors dyan. Pero yung total numbers of investors, source of funds, hindi dapat lalampas ng 19. Okay? Kasi kapag lumampas, parang, general public na ang dating. Ganyan. In a way. Okay? Tapos, the second one would be through the bond market, yung mga nag-i-issue ng bonds. So, let's say my project, si BDO or kung sino mang company. Okay, parang yung last na datnan ko dati is BDO kasi. So, nag-raise sila ng capital, let's say 50 million, tapos in-issue nila through bonds. Okay? So, dun sa mga bumibili, investors na bumili ng bonds, so, dun yun yung paraan paano na sila nakakapag-raise ng capital na pwede nilang gamitin. Tapos, normally, itong mga bonds na to, para siyang utang, na meron siyang maturity term, let's say 5 years, 10 years, ganyan. And then, ang return naman sa kanya, dun sa mga investors, ay di merong interest, okay? Let's say, every month, may matatanggap sila na interest corresponding dun sa kung magkano yung binili nila na bonds, okay? And then, after no maturity term, so saka lang nila matatanggap or mababalik sa kanila yung in-invest nila. Okay? So, those are two types kung paano nag-raise ng capital ang businesses through stock and then through bonds. Okay? So, that's it for this video. Ang ating naging topic dito is, about the capital market. So, that's it for this one. Thanks and bye.